素有爆料之王之称的拉菲兹，因在2011年揭露国家养牛中心以拟挪用公款一案，涉及泄露银行机密资料，今年2月被判抵触2宗刑事案罪成。3月14号，他在国会辩论中发表了告别国会演讲，正式宣布不会参加来届大选。
Ini adalah ucapan saya yang terakhir di dalam Dewan Tan Sri yang dipertua, memandangkan ahli-ahli Dewan yang mulia di dalam pilihan raya umum yang akan datang. Jadi saya akan bermula dengan mengucapkan jutaan terima kasih dan perhargaan kepada Tan Sri yang dipertua dan kepada Datuk Sri timbalan-timbalan yang dipertua yang selalu memberi ruang dan pertimbangan yang sebaiknya kepada saya untuk berhujah. Saya berdoa Dewan ini akan lebih dimuliakan dalam masa-masa yang akan datang. Saya juga ingin meminta maaf sekiranya kritikan saya yang pedas kepada pihak kerajaan selama 5 tahun yang lepas di dalam Dewan yang mulia ini ada yang melukakan hati ahli-ahli Dewan di sebelah sana. Saya tidak pernah ada perasaan benci, malah saya cukup senang juga dengan kawan-kawan dan sahabat-sahabat daripada sebelah sana yang turut bertukar-tukar kritikan. Kinabatangan tak ada hari ini, Lenggong pun tak ada, Tenggara, malah walaupun Tanjung Karang selalu juga mengkritik saya dengan keras, kami sebenarnya baik di luar.
成也揭弊，败也揭弊。这次被判罪成，拉菲兹直言他尽了本分，毫不后悔，并且会继续抗争到底。
Saya telah jalankan amanah saya. Saya tidak menyesal sedikit pun. Saya pasrah dan apapun hukuman ke atas saya dan keluarga saya akan redha dan menerimanya dengan baik. Kami tenang kerana kami tahu kami telah jalankan amanah kami.
拉菲兹的国会议员资格是否会被褫夺，将在他完成所有上诉程序后方能有定夺。他的政治生涯是否就这样告一段落？这次的 On the Hot Seat， 我们邀请了拉菲兹与我们分享他跌宕起伏的政坛经历。各位观众朋友，大家晚上好，欢迎收看我们最新一集的 On the Hot Seat。今天呢，刚才看过了我们的短片，就知道我们邀请的嘉宾是谁。当然，在节目还没有开始之前，还是要通知一下各位观众朋友，就是可能之前你还没有收看过我们这个节目，或者没有收看过百格的任何节目的话，各位观众朋友在这是节目进行的当中是可以发问的，只要你在评论区呢贴上你的提问，那我们的这个制作人呢觉得适合的时候，就会就是让我们就会把你的问题挑出来，让我们今天的这个嘉宾来回答。当然你可以用就是可能你可以用中文，如果你觉得比较舒服的话，你可以用中文，当然也可以用英文或者马来文，任何语言来向今天的嘉宾提问。好，事不宜迟，我们就展开今天的访问。Hi, Wabi. Hi. Thanks. Good evening, and thanks for coming and joining us at Pocket Time today. So we have watched some clips that you have recorded, or some clips from the your speech, your so-called final speech in Dewan Rakyat. So, how's life after that speech? Is there any difference?
No, it's the same because for the last 2 years, I lost my voice.
Yeah.
So for the last 2 years,
For a lot of charamas.
Because of a lot of ceramah, but I've spent the last 2 years preparing for this election.
Yes.
So before or after that speech, whether or not it's my final speech, the closer it gets to the election, the more work that has to be done in office and outside and on the campaigning ground. So it has not changed a bit. It's almost the same. The last 2 years,
usual.
Business as usual. Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that you have been busy preparing for this particular election for 2 years, but you're actually a MP for only 1 term.
Yeah.
You haven't even complete your term, right? So, with the sentence of the court and it's pending appeal now, do you think it's too short, your time spent in the parliament as a member of parliament?
No, because it's the longest job I've stayed so far.
Is it?
Yeah, because
okay.
I've always stayed not more than 2 or 3 years in a particular designation or job. So even throughout my time in Petronas, about 7 to 8 years, I've had 3 different jobs doing completely 3 different things.
3 different duties and roles,
Yeah,
you mean?
and designations and positions. So, in fact, I've changed industries quite regularly after this. So, by my standard, 5 years is a very long time doing the same thing.
But do you think it's long enough to achieve whatever you set to achieve by joining politics?
No, I think whatever our mission or whatever we want to contribute through politics is not necessarily achievable just through parliament. There are people who sit there for 7 terms, and I don't know whether they change a lot of things.
Okay.
There are people who, I suppose, it is up to the quality and the focus you give. I think I've done. I'm satisfied with the time that I've spent in Parliament in terms of I managed to get to do what I wanted to do. I managed to bring, I think, the debate in Parliament to the people outside. I managed to focus on some of the issues that I wanted to bring to Parliament. So certainly if I have more time, there's a lot more that can be done. But I think given that 5 years, despite being very short, but I think we did achieve something considerably well.
Okay. You have, I don't know, I mean, for the lack of better word, you have always been quite a character in keadilan. And, at times pretty controversial. Even, people within the party or outside the party has something to say about you. So, it's interesting to know, what would you think it's your goal in politics? What do you think you are fighting for?
I just, from the very first day that I was dragged into reformasi and I finally decided and said that, perhaps I should give some of my time to this. My only objective is to make sure that there's a competition in politics. There must be a two-party system because people need choice. I may be in PKR, but there's nobody who can guarantee PKR or Pakatan will always stay true to the mandate and to what we preach today. Power corrupts. 1, 2, 3 terms and then politicians become something different. Of course, it's the same that has happened to BN before. Politicians, the government being weak or mismanaged, or politicians become corrupt is part and parcel of power structure. What is dangerous to a society is when you have a monopoly that people cannot switch and cannot change. So my objective from the very beginning is that there must be a competition in Malaysian politics so that the public can always switch. If one coalition or party is good, you give the mandate to them. Eventually they will become bad because power corrupts. Then people can always swing between one party to another. The competition becomes very healthy, and in the end the public will win. So that's my objective. It's not really power, it's not really position, and I think we've done quite well in the last 10 years in that department.
Okay, so just now you mentioned that one of the few things that you think you have achieved is to focus on a few issues that you want to focus. What would you think that looking back at the past 5 years, or as long as you have been with PKR, what are the issues that you wish to focus personally?
Well, I mean, corruption is a big issue, and I remember about 8 or 9 years back when Anwar finally convinced me to leave my corporate job and come and do this full time. Generally, I think society then, in 2010, 2009, believed that especially Malays don't care about corruption. 20 years back, if you talk to friends from the US, from Britain, they would pass remarks that Malaysians don't care about corruption. They tolerate it so long as they get. So that's an insult to me. I think
Malaysians or Malay?
20 years back, people
it's
generally
everybody.
lump together.
Okay.
But I think after 2008, the issue of governance and economic mismanagement was given quite a serious attention by the Chinese, for example. Then back then, because of the way that Malays were seen to be the staunch support for UMNO, and then the Chinese took side with the opposition, So the thinking then about 9-10 years ago was that Malays don't care about corruption. That's an insult to me, and I think to any Malaysians when to say that we don't care about corruptions and we tolerate it. So I've always felt from the early days of Reformasi, it's all about corruption. It's all about either corruption of position, corruption of money, corruption because you think you're the only one who knows best, you know. So issue of corruption and creating awareness to Malaysia's public at large that it's something that we have to combat to the fullest has always been close to me, and I think that's why I was very much associated with scandals, with whistleblowing, with exposés, because that's what I've always wanted to do, and that's an issue that I wanted to change in society, that they can't tolerate corruption. They must take mismanagement and corruption seriously.
Okay. I just want to follow up on the issues of you mentioning that Malay don't care about corruption. Do you think they care?
They care very much. In fact, I always feel that.
Do you think they care now? They care more now, or like when you mentioned during the Reformasi days, they actually don't care?
No. I mean, I wouldn't have been in Reformasi if I didn't care.
But you are different.
No. You see, in 1998,
Yes.
the majority of the Malays actually took side with Reformasi, remember?
Yes.
In 1999,
Yes.
67% of Malay voters actually rejected UMNO. So to say that Malays can tolerate abuse of power, corruption, is not true. I've always, and that's part of the reason why even my colleagues in Pakatan or PKR sometimes feel a discomfort with me, because I always felt that it was our failure to articulate corruption in a manner that relates to the Malays at large. That's why you can't just tell them condescendingly that A is corrupt, therefore it doesn't work like that. The causal link takes a lot more articulation and convincing, and it's not enough by just pointing a finger. You actually have to walk the talk. So that's why if we have problem with the way BN politicians amass wealth, it's not enough by just saying they are corrupt. You actually have to declare your assets. It's by showing that I have the right and legitimacy to question it, because I'm all transparent and I can do it and I want them to do it. So I think over the years, building that credentials, I think, helped convince more and more Malays that we mean it. Focusing on corruption is not a political ploy. Is a basis for everything that is wrong in this country. So as we get more and more people convinced, I think then more and more Malays actually see that corruption relates to them, and it's not just a political fight.
Okay, this is rather interesting because you mentioned declarations of assets. Because so far as we know that even some of your comrades within Pakatan Harapan, not all of them are ready to come out and declare their assets. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think having spent a lot of time talking to them, I can appreciate that some of them feel that it's a matter of privacy. Some believe that unless and until you hold an official public position, that you are in a position to influence decision making, therefore you are not obliged to declare your assets, because doing that will violate your privacy. I mean, I can understand that, fair enough. But I come from slightly different view. My view is that if we were to change society, it's not enough just to say or just to ask other people to do it. We have to make it a culture, and politicians have to lead it. So I think to those who still feel apprehensive, or they think that privacy is a big matter, as more and more people begin to declare their assets, and the public continues to throw support behind those who declare their assets, I think politicians from both sides of the fence will begin to understand that is a plus point, is a premium if you are seen as a transparent politician who declare your assets. The moment politicians know that you get something out of declaring asset, which is you become more popular, people believe you more, your standing actually gets better, then I think is a societal push that they have no choice. Eventually they have to declare your assets.
Even if you don't win my confidence, you win my eyeballs because I actually go and check your declaration.
Yeah.
Right. I quote you in your writings many years ago. So let us remember that one should not lose oneself in search for a place in the public life. I think this is very well written.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope
Did
that
I write that one? When was that? It must be years ago. Yeah.
2010.
Is it? Sounds a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, or 2010.
Yeah.
I think it's in your blog. So do you think you have lost yourself along the way?
No, I struggle a lot about that. That's why I think you pointed out quite correctly that I'm an oddball. I people feel that I refuse to budge in. I refuse to be absorbed into politics or political life. Mostly because of that, and I don't want to lose myself in politics. That because we have an objective, and the objective is noble more often than not, on both sides of the fence. I think people enter politics for noble reasons. Of course, they lose their way along the way.
So you did not enter politics to become, because you opted the cause of being a whistleblower, you did not want to become Edward Snowden of Malaysia?
No, I don't. I mean, but there are cultures in politics. There are precedents. There are practices that people before you would tell you that's just how it is. You just have to conform. It's like there's a pecking order, and then it's like if there's something that you feel your party doing is not right, or you think that for example, one cultural setting in this country is that you should not quarrel or bicker or differ your opinion publicly. I disagree with that. And I think a lot of what I do is because I wanted to stay true to what I am, because I am like this. Whether I'm a politician or whether I'm a corporate guy, whether I'm a newscaster, I am opinionated. I want to say what I feel, and to me, being in politics is just a job. It might be a 10-year job, a 12-year job. I will end up going back to a private citizen's life. I don't want politics to change my value and to make me someone different from before I decided to join politics.
Okay, you call yourself an oddball, and I'm not the one who said that.
Yeah.
Anyways, but since we're talking about this, about how unconventional you are and you don't want to toe the line, but it's very interesting to have you writing in your blog, telling people about what's going on in the party and who is on which side, and disclosing the fractions within the party. Would you have done that if you are in a corporate world?
I had. You should read my farewell letter to Petronas.
Okay.
It's about 21 pages, and it circulates every year. I voice my dissatisfaction or my opinion or my view about people. I've done that continuously.
But that is in your farewell letter.
Yeah.
Not during your time when you were with Petronas.
No, but okay, in Petronas, when you differ with your superiors, or when you have a different positions, you are allowed to speak up. So in your report, in your views, in your management meetings, you are allowed to differ with your boss. And sometimes even if you go to interdepartmental meetings, you don't necessarily have to do the position that your boss did. There are ways that you may suggest to do it differently. I was in finance. Sometimes you can go A, sometimes you can do B. Sometimes, more often than not, for example, I run my business fraternity I don't have to toe the line that the corporate wanted me to do it. So long as I have a different idea, I wanted to do it differently. So I think I've maintained that record all along. Should I voice out disagreements, I would, provided that, of course, so long as you don't maliciously slander people, so long as you don't do it because you want to go up, you know. So I think nothing has changed much organizationally, whether you are in corporate or whether you're in politics. What is wrong in society is when people actually refuse to say things because you watch your back. That is wrong.
Okay. Okay. So this is one of your unconventional practices. But well, someone in the party or your fellow party leaders, one of the leaders, so she said that the Kijang move, has actually destroyed or has actually been very detrimental to Pakatan Rakyat. You know, reflecting on this, right, it has been some years. I mean, it has been some time. So when you look at this, do you think that your action or whatever that you have done contributed to the Kijang move? Do you still justify it? Is it still justifiable?
I think a large majority of leadership and also the public out there will quietly say that it was the right decision.
Quietly.
Yeah, but that's the nature of society. They will not admit it. Or my colleagues wouldn't come and say it was the right decision. I mean, we knew beforehand, for example, the previous chief minister had some problems with the loan facility. We knew there had always been complaints about him from other partners. We also knew then that PAS internally, PAS had problems getting on board with the consensus decisions of other parties. It's just that the public actually has a lack in terms of understanding what happens behind the scene, because unlike politicians, the members of the public basically spend not 5% of their time following politics. So they would have seen PAS as being an instrumental part of Pakatan. They wouldn't have believed it if we were to tell the public then that PAS did have a problem about some of the decisions, or they won't follow some of the decisions and they won't follow some of the conventions. You know, the public has to witness it themselves. The public has to judge it themselves. So that's why the Kijang move allow and force that issue to the public and the politicians to confront. Because remember, I say, it's always better in our society to sweep everything under the carpet. We hate confrontations. We leave the problems to brew inside for it to blow. Had, for example, Kijang move had not happened, we would have had a big problem when Datuk Sri Najib had the 1MDB scandal and 2.6. Because a large one portion of Pakatan Rakyat, if it still exists, PAS, would have taken quite a different position compared to PKR and DAP. Because PAS would have viewed the scandal quite differently, as you can see from now, than how the position that is taken by PKR and DAP. It's going to be a big mess. So that's why the crux of the issue then, prior, leading up, then after Kijang move, is whether or not when you have three parties in a coalition, when a decision has been made, whether every single party will follow.
Well, I think your justification now is only, it only leads to what the Kijang move have expedited the marriage, the breakdown of the marriage, because a lot of people have perceived that Pakatan Harapan is actually a marriage of convenience.
Pakatan Harapan or Pakatan Rakyat?
Sorry, Pakatan Rakyat, PR, I'm sorry. So it has just expedited it, but it's how the way things are being done. An elected representative was asked to vacate or resigned to make ways for his political leader or for a political maneuver. So are you someone that actually thinks that your ends justified your means?
Your initial suggestion was wrong. I disagree when you say it's precipitated the demise, because it's like when people get married, you are tested from one crisis, one disagreement, you know. It's a test that you have to go through. If PAS, for example, value the political cooperation within Pakatan Rakyat, they would have had a give and take.
Yeah.
Likewise, DAP had give and take. So any political cooperation started off with differences.
Yes.
Just like any marriage starts with differences or the unknowns. As you discover each other, you begin to compromise, and you live and let live. That's how marriage survives. That's how political cooperation survives as well. So what happened with Kijang move is not that it precipitated a demise because it was a marriage of convenience. It basically showed that PAS at that point was not committed to that long-lasting political cooperation, as committed as PKR, DAP, and some parts of PAS, which eventually became Amanah. You know, to your question whether the end justifies the means, to me, so long as it is done within the legal and constitutional boundaries, so long it is explained to the public, so long that it has an objective that is very much driven by public interest rather than political self-interest of a few people. Whatever that is legal, that is required to save the very basis of what Pakatan was, and defending the integrity of a chief minister and the integrity of a government of Selangor then was actually a strong reason for us to do it, because it would have been a lot easier if PAS would have took the line. Then there was no necessity for Kijang move. It's precisely because we know PAS felt then that they were the big brothers of Pakatan, that they wouldn't toe the line, that even though by convention PKR has the right to change our chief minister without going through a lot of hassle, PAS would feel that they have the final say and they would block it. So the only way to do it was to vacate a position and to force the by-election.
Okay, so there is nothing that you would have done differently for Kijang move?
Well, Kijang move was a pretext to the political developments that we have now in 2018. If Kijang move was not done, there wouldn't have been Amanah. And if Pakatan Rakyat did not collapse, I think developments in UMNO would have been different, because Tun Mahathir and Tan Sri Muhyiddin would have been mindful of a stronger opposition when they were confronting Datuk Sri Najib in the case of 1MDB. But because 1MDB happened immediately, or it blew up immediately after the collapse of Pakatan Rakyat, I think it emboldened a lot of UMNO leaders then to confront it, which eventually caused the breakout of UMNO to become Bersatu. And Pakatan Harapan is more streamlined in terms of views, in terms of direction, and the result, I think, part of the result of Kijang move after 4 years is you have a lot more cohesive opposition coalition going into the next election to take on Najib. So I wouldn't have done anything differently. It's not conventional, but then again, I think there are 1,000 ways to a destination. Sometimes you have to take a long and winding road to go to a destination, even though that destination is right in front of you, because it's safer, and the straight path actually is fraught with danger. So, yeah, I wouldn't have done anything differently.
Okay, so talking about whether going straight or doing, go through the long winding road, you are sort of like the whistleblower. So a lot of people think that you have exposed a lot of things, but some think that not all of your expose are legit. Do you want to share how you come to decide what, I think information has
Define
come to
legit.
you. Well, some people think that it's a show.
Why?
It's for a certain purpose. I mean, that's how it's being perceived. But do you care to share how you come to decide what you will be exposing, or
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of people who come with all sorts of issues
Yes,
every
that's
time. The number one consideration is whether or not the information or document is authentic. And number two is whether it has a large public interest. For example, a group of people may come to me and say they got cheated.
Yes.
But even if all the information is authentic, is correct, is bona fide, but it only concerns a small group of people, and it's pretty much, in my opinion, in the private domain of their affairs. So I usually don't take up those issues. As opposed to, for example, there might be someone who comes and say that it is in his knowledge that 20 million people were stolen, 20 million ringgit was stolen, so and so, and is the poor is stolen from a fund for poor people that affects 20,000 poor students. That, in my opinion, has a much wider public implications, and therefore I would take up that case and I would spend time researching on behalf to find out more information. So it's always those two considerations that overrides everything else.
If the information is something against your party or whoever that is from your side of the divide, would you have done the same thing if it
I went to
fulfilled?
SPRM and report.
Yes.
I am the only political party leader in this country who went to report against my own party.
True.
Yeah. And I know that this question comes all the time. It's like, why do you whistleblow only against BN and not to your government? Well, because SPRM and policemen and MCA and Gerakan and all the other parties, they are paid and given the state resources to monitor the business and also the dealings of Pakatan run state government. The opposition in those in state governments are actually from BN. So they have the backup of the federal government with them. They have the backup of the police. They should be doing that job. And I find it ridiculous and funny that they are shouting, why are you not exposing this and that against Guan Eng and against Azmin? Because if they have evidence, they would have dragged Azmin or Guan Eng to court immediately. Plus, I mean, whatever I have, I went and reported to SPRM straight away. The one thing that I think most people forget is this. The reason why whistleblowers or people with information come to me to disclose or to expose federal government's corruption is because they have taken this through the normal channel. They had reported this to the police, they had reported this to the SPRM, but because there was no action, they had no other way but to come to an opposition politician. The reverse is actually quite different because it is in the interest of the Barisan Nasional-led federal government to expose and to attack Pakatan-led state government. So the fact that it was not done actually is more is a reflection of the failure on the part of SPRM and policemen and MCA and Gerakan and UMNO rather than on me.
So it's a better utilization of resources.
Correct. I mean, you know what? If I actually have at my disposal 10,000 people, I would have gone and snooped for every single politician. I don't. I only have myself, so I can't,
Okay, you only have yourself to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, in the in view of the recent judgment, is there a moment after the pronouncement of the judgment that you actually regretted this whistleblowing thing?
You see, this is another thing which I think sometimes I initially I struggled to understand why people can't understand, but eventually I just accepted people are like that. You see, when I disclose a corruption, when I expose a scandal, I think what is most important to me is that I have a public duty and I cannot lie, and I have to disclose it because it is a public duty to do it. What I was most concerned, actually over and above the public interest, is that how politics has taken a toll on me. I don't want, as you pointed out much earlier on, I reminded myself all the time that I don't want to lose myself in politics. I don't want to start pick and choose what is right, what is wrong, which one to turn my eyes away, which one to basically look the other way around. Exposing and telling the truth actually is about safeguarding what I am. I want to be able to tell myself that nothing has changed, even though I've spent the last 10 years in politics. I am exactly the same person. It doesn't make me become calculative. It doesn't make me become, as I said, I need to toe the line just for my political career. So that's more important to me even than the public interest.
But do you think it makes you wiser?
No, it makes me at peace with myself. Yeah. Because if I had known, for example, that money was stolen, and I know that other people were not trained in finance the way that I do, and I could understand if other people cannot read accounts, I can read accounts quite readily compared to other people, and I do not do anything, I can't sleep at night because I sleep on the job, and it's a job I take. A good pay is, it's not the best of pay, but it's not a bad pay, but
it's a huge pay cut.
Yeah, well, what's money after a while? But I was brought up and that's who I am. That I really want to give the best in everything that I do, and that's why I am highly opinionated, because I just want to get it right, So even as an MP, as a politician with a huge understanding about finance, you know what's going on, but because you think that this may disqualify me from standing, I'll just keep quiet. I mean, that is something that I cannot live with myself, because it compromises your core values. So I got to be who I am, so I shouldn't have any problem. I shouldn't have any regret. In fact, I am really at peace because I think I've passed the test. Okay. I think that I was put in a position where I could choose, the right or left, one option against another, and the fact that I choose the option despite being difficult, it's something that is me. It's something that does not tell me that I put my career or my self-interest above anything else. That's something that I'm very at peace with.
Okay. You belong to the Reformasi generation. That's where you started, you joined PKR and stuff like that. Looking back at what has transpired for close to 2 decades, do you think we are getting better or worse as a country, as a nation? It's a huge question.
That's a very huge, tricky question. Yes and no. This will be used against me, but I think society has become better politically, because
is that for good or for
what? It's for good. It's for good because I remember when we started out, the room for us to speak like this, the room for me to go on stage and criticize governments, everything was actually very limited. People were very afraid, The young ones stayed away from politics because they think that it's too big a risk to take. things are a lot better now. Not thanks to Najib though. You know, it's thanks to technology. I think the world has moved so much. The fourth revolution, you know, the IT, the Facebook, the YouTube that we have means no matter what the authorities try in terms of curbing the spread of information, it's just impossible. People will talk, people will share information, and the democratization of information means the public has better options at choosing. They can choose whoever they like. So in that sense, it's better than the 1998. But I think we get worse politically, and it's worse off for Chinese, Indian, Malays, more so. Not so much about the headlines economic numbers. It's just that if we look relatively, despite all the growth that we have had, you know, on average about 4 to 5% for the last 20 years, the fact that people gets much lower disposable income now, the fact that the bottom 40 actually grows much larger now than before, the fact that the gap between the high earners and the low earners get bigger, it means that the inequality in society has grown much bigger. So on the one hand, I think I'm lucky because I lived throughout that 20 years to be able to see that Malaysians as a society has matured a lot politically and socially. But you know, I pity and I fear for the younger ones as they have to struggle in this economic climate.
Okay, it's very interesting because you say that a lot of things that we can do now, the space, the democratic space that we have, it's partly due to the development of technology, but sometimes regulator catch up with us. So like we know that the anti-fake news law has been tabled. That I think that I'm not so sure, but looking at what has been tabled, it's going to make whistleblowing much more difficult. You know what you have been doing, it can be called fake news and stuff. So, what do you think about this? The development of the way that the policies and the regulations and all this.
Well, it's a good attempt to stifle, but then again, of course, I think it's intimidating to a large part of society because 500,000 fine is huge.
Yes, it is. And 10 years.
In 10 years. But then again, people like me grew up during the ISA, when ISA regime was in place, you know. Political activists, young activists like me then had to contend with one letter and then you are off indefinitely in prison. My point is this. Any governments in the world can try to stifle, regulate, intimidate, send this negative messages to people, but then eventually there will be people who rise up to challenge such laws. You know, when laws are unfair and laws are meant to stifle, not to liberate, you know, what will happen is there will always be persistent opposition to that laws, and every now and then there will be people who are willing to put their necks on the line, you know, and eventually that law stops from becoming effective. Bad laws, no matter how intimidating and threatening it is, eventually becomes ineffective because people just ignore it. And there will come a tipping point unless the authority decides to fine everyone and put everyone in jail. After a while, you know, I think
you can't have the space to do that.
Yeah, they just can't do it. It's too much.
Okay, so just now you've mentioned that, you know, the gap, the income gap and the economy situation of Malaysia, which is deteriorating. Do you think this is the biggest problem in Malaysia?
No, I think the biggest problem in Malaysia is the school.
Our education.
Yeah. I mean, the widening income gap, you know, the fact that the bottom 40 grows bigger is because our education system is struggling to catch up, not just with the competitors, not just with Singapore or with China or with Korea or with Vietnam. It struggled to even catch up with what we need in the country. Even the basic needs of the industries, of the economy. If you go and talk to the young ones, they will say that they got so frustrated because they have a degree, they graduate, but no one wants to employ them. If you go and talk to the employers will say that, we can't employ them, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't think on their own, they can't do anything without any help. Of course, the truth is somewhere in the middle. But my belief is this: the education system has been confined and constrained too long that it is struggling to bring out the best out of a child, out of a student. Yes. The approach to the education is very different in this country than compared to perhaps some other countries. I know that people can argue and say the education system, the school system in China is a lot stringent, for example. The school system in Singapore is mean compared to what we have. Yet, if you look at in Scandinavia and some other European countries, I like the idea where you look at every single student, every single child as someone with massive potential. If he can't do the maths, he might be able to draw well. If he can't sing, he might be a good footballer. And I think the European approach to it is more to get the best out whoever, whatever they decide to do in their life. So we ought to be spending the first few years of the school telling kids that they can own the world if they want to. But we don't, here. We basically box people into the good ones, the bad apples, the good oranges. This is the engineers, these are the doctors, and so on. So I think it has taken a toll to the society as a whole. So if you can't fix the school, we have much bigger problem in anything, in economy, in politics, socially. So the biggest problem is the school. It has to be fixed.
Well, I guess that's a frustration for a lot of people. We know that there's a problem there, but we don't know who can fix it. And we can just lift it to the hands in the hands of our government. But nothing much has been done. But anyways, maybe there's one of our audience actually asked. This audience, his name is Lee Wei. So I don't know whether they can capture the question. If Pakatan Rakyat, or I think it's if Pakatan Harapan. See, people are still very confused. If Pakatan Harapan took over the federal government, would Pakatan Rakyat abolishes those parliament acts which seem
contradicted
with our constitution or maybe violating?
Yeah, violating.
So, could you give some examples?
There are, I think, some practices. I can't recall the exact acts, but there are some rules or practices which perhaps is against the spirit of constitution or is no longer propagating the intention of the constitution. Discriminatory laws, for example, is one example. The constitution was very specific that there is a special position for the Malays.
Yes.
And this special position is recognized legally and it's mentioned specifically about education and civil service, Yet that has to be done without discriminating other races. A lot of the practices that are discriminatory are not even in laws. It's actually is a practice, Local governments make by rules, by laws, and say if you want to expand your house, it has to be like this, it has to be like that. And so even before we go to that point about laws, a lot of changes has to take place when it comes to rules, procedures, SOPs, and this can be done even without changing the law. But at the top of it, there are a few laws that, to me, clearly
Needs to be addressed.
And I wouldn't be so quick to say that it's against the constitution, but it is very prone for abuse by the authority, that it will violate the freedom and the personal liberty of a citizen. One such example is SOSMA, a detention without trial on the suspicion of terrorism. I've dealt with one SOSMA case which sometimes is guilty by association, in my opinion, just because one person knows the other person, and without his knowledge, that person happens to be a sympathizer for ISIS. That person happens to have a photo with you or went out to see you, and then you bundle everyone and you put them 8, 9 years, 10 years, and then 48 days without detention, without trial detention. So it's very prone for abuse, and that is something that has to be revised. Even if we retain the law, the safeguards against abuse has to be strengthened, so that the power is not so loosely given to the authority. The other one, of course, the Sedition Act has to be repealed.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the biggest one, the next after that has to be repealed is, of course, is anti-fake news, because in which part of Constitution that says that the public has no right to think for ourselves? Because that's more or less, long and short of it, what fake news, anti-fake news bill is trying to do. It's basically trying to say that government decide what is right and wrong. If what you put on your Facebook or what you talk we think is wrong, therefore you are liable for this and that and that. So nothing in the law actually defines what is right, what is fake, what is not fake. What is prescribed is that government has the power to decide your posting. So that is clearly against many tenets of the Constitution. So at least 2 or 3 on top of my head. But I think what is more important as well is not just the law, is also a lot of practices which were extra legal, so to speak. You know, it's not even written in the law, but it has been accepted as practices over the years.
Okay, since it's rather interesting because you mentioned the section or the article in the Constitution that provides special position for the Malay race, and your take on that it should not be discriminatory. To what extent do you think it can be changed, or where it could actually accord more protection, or maybe to be more fair and equal to other races?
Well, there are 2 parts to it, you know. The first one is the letter of the Constitution. It's what is written in the Constitution, you know. The other one is the spirit behind it. Of course, the Article 153 was written against a backdrop of a lot of insecurities, of Malays felt they were displaced in their own lands, you know. I don't think anyone who wrote that or who agreed on that wanted Malays to be dependent on a paragraph of protection in the Constitution. But given the backdrop of insecurity then, of course, that it was put there, and therefore, for as long as that insecurity exists, of course, the issue about Article 153 or removing it or amending it or watering it down or being fairer or extending the same to other races will always become an emotional polemic. So I have always said to my friends, the non-Malay friends, the Chinese, the Indians, the Westerners, and say that, you know, issues like that is not something that you confront head on by way of saying you have to remove it. sometimes it might still be there, but eventually, even in the next 10 years, I'm not surprised when more and more Malays actually feel they can compete, that there's nothing to fear from Chinese or Indians, or when they realize that they are better off competing actually rather than being under the protection of special privileges like that. While the constitution may remain there, but I think the practices and the policies that favor or that discriminates the non-Malays across the board actually will become more and more untenable. So
Okay, this is quite interesting because I want to ask you, like, how do you think that this insecurity it's growing, like it's increasing, or it has been lesser over the years since, you know, when the article was drafted? It was a long time ago. So maybe you can help us to understand the Malay community a little bit, like, you know, how many % of people still feel very insecure and they need this kind of protection to be accorded to them via the constitution.
I think Dato Sri Najib has helped a lot to lessen the insecurity. Not by design though. What happened in the last 10 years, I think, is this. The inequality and the economic hardship, especially among Malays, has made them realize, more and more young ones actually
That they need
realize,
to compete.
Perhaps not straight to that point, straight away, but made them realize is that this so-called Malay protection serves no one. They don't get anything out of it, you know. We live in a country where constitutionally Malays are so-called special, have a special position, but they can't get a job. Their degree sometimes won't guarantee them anything. They struggle. So it makes them think that at the end of the day, a lot of it is politics. It actually does not benefit them that much, you know. Then when that happens, the focus then shift towards governance, towards accountability against corruption. That is when I think people realize that there's a lot of the issues, a lot of the issue is not really about the Chinese versus the Malays versus the Indians or protection. It's more about how the economic cake goes to everyone fairly. And as that happens, more and more, I think, of the younger Malays will understand that it is better to compete and grow the economic cake, because you will get a bigger pie when the cake is bigger. Of course, comparatively, there are a lot more poor Malays compared to Chinese. By a percentage, there are more poorer Indians than Chinese or Malays. You know, I think so long as there is safety net for the poor ones, and by design that means that majority of those are from Malays, without neglecting the fact that the Chinese poor and the Indian poor also have to be helped. And if we manage to do that in one generation, in the next 10 years, I think it will build up so much confidence in the Malays that they can actually compete, and eventually the so-called the need for constitutional protection becomes less and less relevant every day.
Okay, since we are on the topic of understanding the Malay community or maybe the Malay voters, you know, in the last election, the 2013 general election, the Prime Minister actually said that there's a Chinese tsunami. Are we to expect a Malay tsunami actually for this coming election? What do you think? This is actually a question asked by one of the audience as well. Yeah.
I mean, some people hate me for being academic every time I answer, because it depends what you mean by tsunami. Is a 5% swing tsunami? Is an 80% support tsunami? So
Okay.
let me put it this way. I think if we were to compare the term in terms of swing of support, I don't think we would be seeing a huge swing as drastic as the Chinese swinging to opposition in 2013. Because back in 2013, I'm talking about Malays, you know.
Yes.
Back in 2013, on average, about 80% of the Chinese voters around the country voted for Pakatan Rakyat, then we won't be seeing that. But the drop in support for UMNO is drastic enough that it will have a huge repercussion to the number of seats that UMNO can win. And I've based this with on surveys that we've done, a lot of analytics we've done. All indications are pointing to UMNO getting at most a 40% support.
40%
support. Pakatan will get around 35 to 40 depending on states. PAS will get between 20 to 25 depending on states. If PAS has more, BN and Pakatan has less, and so on and so forth. The dynamic is like that. But while Pakatan getting...
Didn't Invoke has this research that recently announced that say PAS will lose everything in this coming election? Okay.
Because that's pre-qualifying.
Okay.
When in pre-qualifying, despite having 25% or 20% of the votes, you still lose.
Yes.
Because it's the guy who gets 40 that will win, you know. So going back to the Malay votes, right? In that sense, the Malay support is not going to be as lopsided as the Chinese support for it to be called tsunami, because the Chinese support was very lopsided. It's 80-20, you know. Malays are more even between the three, you know. You are looking, I think, Pakatan and BN almost neck and neck. In some states, Pakatan gets better. In other states, BN gets better. But in the context that UMNO used to enjoy 65% Malay support, a drop from 65 to 40% is a huge drop. So that is what is happening in this general election. While the swing is not as lopsided as the Chinese swing for it to be called a tsunami, but a 20% or more support, a drop in support of Malays, that about 20 to 25% of Malays will swing from UMNO to either Pakatan or PAS for that matter, is huge enough to cause UMNO to lose at least another 20-25 seats.
But the 20% that is dropping does not really translate to a swing, because it could be people, I mean, as at this point of time, it could be fence-sitter, right?
Oh yeah, but swing is always considered. I mean, is a fence-sitters who swing is
you're right.
Is not supporters, you know. So the reason why the Chinese swing was huge for it, to the point that it's called tsunami, because the Chinese fence-sitters actually, by lock, stock and barrel, actually moved to Pakatan. So we are seeing the same thing. You are right. Actually, the one who swing is actually the Malay fence-sitters, the ones who traditionally was pro-UMNO and pro-government and pro-establishment, but now feel that it's time for change. The core of UMNO and the core of PKR and Pakatan, the core of PAS actually do not move at all, hardly move. It's the swing voters who, and that's how I can explain why those people who feel that Pakatan Harapan without PAS is a failure was wrong. Because PAS actually does have a strong support.
Yes.
But a lot of the support were from Malay fence-sitters who were just against government of the day. So PAS being the largest opposition Malay party before, they benefited most from being an opposition. Their core is not that much different from PKR's core or Bersatu core. It's about 10% of the Malays.
10%.
10% of the Malays. So PKR has about 10% of Malay support. I mean, core Malay members, Malay support. PPBM has about 10. Amanah slightly lower. PAS has about 11-12. So individually, we are just 10%. UMNO has about 30% core. You know? The one that decides whether it's UMNO or PAS or Pakatan is actually ordinary Malay voters who are not affiliated to any party. So they are the ones who swing. Yeah. So in the past, they overwhelmingly back BN. In the last general election, in seats where PAS took on UMNO, PAS got 40%, UMNO got 60%. In seats where it's PKR versus UMNO, it's 35-65. PKR only got 35% Malay support. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the the composition of the Malay swing voters in the last general election, PKR get about 25%, but UMNO gets about 35%. So more Malay swing voters were with UMNO than with PKR. But now, more and more of that is actually leaving UMNO and betting on going to vote for Pakatan or PAS for that matter.
What is the strategy of Pakatan Harapan to convince these swing voters or these people on the fence?
It's bread and butter, and I think that's happening very quick. It's actually GST, it's wages, it's unemployment, it's harga barang, it's a subsidy, because they don't actually care that much about politics.
Okay.
They hate corruption, correct?
Yes.
But they hate corruption.
You're quick.
Because they could feel the effect to them. It's not because they hate corruption as an issue of governance. It's quite two different things.
Do you think they could relate it, that whatever that they are feeling the pain of the rising living cost is due to corruption?
Yeah,
Do you think they can relate that?
And that is Najib helped a lot because of the GST. With a stroke of a pen, when GST was implemented. Before GST, the number of Malays who pay tax, I think, is quite low in the country. I mean, it's only 12% of the workforce actually paid tax. And I think the percentage of Malays out of the 12% was even lower, So before GST, I don't think Malay public really understand the concept of taxpayers' money, because that it's not my money. I mean, government can do whatever they like. It's only after GST that they understand every single cent that government spends is their money. And therefore, with the rising cost of living because of subsidy cuts, government expenditure being cut and so on, they felt that they had to pay for government, but the money was lost somewhere. So they could relate directly what happens with 1MDB, with the scandals, with GST, and with how they are suffering economically now.
So, when we look at Pakatan Harapan and Pakatan Rakyat, I think each political party in the alliance played a role. So, would it be, do you think that it's fair to say that Bersatu played the role that PAS has played before in the alliance?
Not really. Number one, the context is quite different. To be fair to PAS, during Pakatan Rakyat's time, PKR was only 10 years old when we won Selangor. And the strength of PAS on the ground, at least in terms of their presence at all the constituencies, was much stronger than PKR. We have to accept that. Things are very different now. PKR is the oldest Malay majority party in all the four parties. Bersatu is quite new, Amanah is quite new. So while we are multiracial parties, we have most presence all over the country, so much so that quite a lot of the burden in terms of machinery presence and presence on the ground has to be shouldered by PKR. So the approach was different, the role was different. I don't think there can be a direct parallel between PAS role and PPBM's, Bersatu's roles now, because it's just two different settings, it's two different coalitions, it's two different mindset altogether.
Okay, so the reason I asked this is because an audience actually asked, how do you view, and our audience Jiashen, her question is, how do you view Tun Mahathir? What's your take on Tun Mahathir? And recently he said that to abolish the toll, it's not workable, and and he said that Pakatan Harapan's parties are actually very
Socialistic.
Yeah, what's your take on him as a leader, and what do he bring? What does he bring into this whole equation?
Let me answer that first before I share what I feel about him or what I think about him. But no one can deny this one important fact. Tun Mahathir has attraction with the older, more pro-establishment Malays. I don't think the level of support is so overwhelmingly significant to the point that without Tun Mahathir, we won't make gains against Najib. But yet we also have to admit that Tun Mahathir has traction with the senior civil servants, with the civil servants, with people in the kampung. Although that additional support may just be 2 or 3% to Pakatan Harapan, but it's the 2-3% that we never got before. And given the situation where most of the seats we lost were marginal seats, we only lost by a few hundred votes.
Yes.
The 2-3% from
Could
this
mean a lot.
could mean a lot, you know. So I don't think anyone can deny that he played his part and he had his contribution towards change. As to the person that he is, I think he is as opinionated than most. I mean, we argue a lot, we quarrel a lot. There were times that he agreed with me, there were times that he thinks I'm a nuisance, for example. On policy-wise, yes, there's a lot of divergence with him because, yeah, I suppose he's quite right. We are, I wouldn't say that we are socialistic, but we are quite left-leaning. In that sense. Yeah. But there's one big difference between when he was a prime minister and now that he has to function as the chairman of Pakatan Harapan, is because Pakatan Harapan is very much a council of leaders. That a chairman cannot bulldoze, nor can the chairman overrule or veto. So, to be fair to him, there were a lot of things that he disagreed with us, but because the rest of the members of the presidential councils and the parties actually agreed on it differently, then he took the line. And this is also my argument with a lot of people who say, how could you believe him? Because things are different and the background and the settings and the power dynamics is very different. Back then, he was a supremo. You know, he controls overwhelmingly the number of support from within his party and from BN. The government will not collapse if anyone walks out. MCA can say, I don't like and I disagree with you and I walk out. Mahathir would just laugh and say, good luck to you. You know, because he has a majority numbers. You know? Things are very different now because chances are, I think, even at best, Bersatu will still be lower in terms of seats compared to DAP or PKR, you know. And even DAP or PKR is not as if we will win overwhelmingly that we can emasculate others because the seat allocations was given in such a way that not a single party can dominate. In that situation, a government of 4 parties, any single party works out, the government collapses. And the Prime Minister will lose his job. So he has to toe the line and understand that if there is strong resistance or strong support for a particular policy or government programs, he just have to navigate and get on with it. So it's like the tool. I think he still think it cannot be done, or he feels that is it the way we want to do it? But overwhelmingly the presidential council members and the 4 parties believe it is the way to go. So he took the line.
Okay, interesting. So, you know, you mentioned the part that PKR is a multiracial party, but when we look at the political landscape today, it is still a BN versus Pakatan Harapan. It is still very much in a bigger picture of things, it's still a very much race-based game. So, do you think, do you foresee that it's going to be different?
Yeah.
And how long will it take to change this?
I think within 10 years a lot of things can change. In fact, I think it's within 10 years. I don't think it's because of politics or because of parties. It's just a natural progression of any society due to urbanization and widespread of information. More and more people, more and more places in Malaysia will feel the effect of urbanization. The moment urbanization reach you, then all the issue of bread and butter, I mean the salaries, wages, public transport will become quite dominant in terms of political discourse. So the political discourse will move away from you are Chinese, I'm a Malay, I'm going to kill you, things like that. It will move more towards can you run the school better? Can you get our wages better? What are job opportunities you are creating for us? And that's quite I wouldn't say it's completely detached from race politics, but
very much issue centric.
But it's very issue centric, and when it's issue centric, then the public will judge politicians by way you manage the issue, by your ingenuity in addressing a problem. It doesn't really matter that you're Chinese or Indian or Malay, but it's how you solve the problem for them. So I think within 10 years, with the rapid urbanization and economic growth, hopefully, and with the spread of information, no politicians can survive by being Jamal anymore. I mean, you can, but you can be a clown every now and then, but people don't really take you seriously. If you want to become serious politicians, you have to move away from racial politics, religious politics too much. I'm not saying that you completely abandon it, because even in the Europe, in US, every now and then immigration.
They have smarter Jamal.
Yeah, they have. They have much decent looking Jamal. But,
Yes.
But people will put more emphasis and more weight on your ability as a administrator rather than your ability as a religious or racial preacher.
Okay. I promise this is going to be the last one or two question. Time and again, you have mentioned, or you have written, or you have actually advocate that Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim is the Prime Minister candidate that can unite all Malaysians. Why do you think so?
I was besides him for most part of the last 10 years. He had his weaknesses. Sometimes he made mistakes. But there's one thing that I think is really, really genuine about. He's really genuine about poor people.
Oh.
I mean, that's him. It's not about Chinese. It's not about poor Indian formally. It's just poor people generally. I mean, he has this attachment to underdogs. I think we will be able to overcome these racial divides once and for all, once society accepts the compassion that you have to give for people in needs regardless of their race or color. That means that when our society can compassionately accept that you have to give scholarship to a poor Malay with 7 A's from a poor kampung compared to a Chinese who gets 10 A's from a rich family, that's compassion. Or the other way around, you don't give a scholarship to 10A from a rich Malay family in KL. You give to an 8 A's from a poor Indian or from Chinese. Once we accept that, I think, then society can move on and believe that we are genuine in our compassion for each other. Now, you need a person who can embody that compassion for the poor, for the needies. And I don't see any other person but Anwar Ibrahim. You can fault him for all the other things, but not when he, when he preach about that. So I don't think it's easy to unite Malaysians of all races on the basis of economic growth or on the basis of a vision. Is on the basis of compassion, and you need someone who is really, really compassionate about it. And for all his whatever he is, that is his strongest points. When, in my opinion, when compared to all the other leaders, he is genuinely concerned about poor people.
But you see, right, what's going on now, it's a lot of young voters are facing, like, they are all the same old faces.
Yeah.
It's either Najib, Anwar Ibrahim or Mahathir. Okay, so I think there is someone that yearn for like some new fresh faces in the political landscape, but there are also some when they come this coming general election, they are actually saying that we are choosing between two rotten apples. What do you have to say to these voters?
Well, if that was the thinking of people in South Africa, they wouldn't have accepted Mandela.
Okay.
You see, Mandela was demonized and painted as rebels, as problem makers. By the time he left prison, I think he was already in 70s, I think he was in 70s, late 60s, 70s, you know. For the good part of the 30 years before he left prison, you either love him or you hate him in South Africa. But a nation so divided and so wounded sometimes needs someone so old to bring everyone together. That's why if you see the period where South Africans healed, they were all led by really, really old people. You know, you have Mandela, you have Desmond Tutu, you know, and a few other people. My point is this, you know, I don't think people should make judgment based on age, based on race, based on color. I think they should be judged for the job they are given.
Okay.
There are people like me, I think, can do certain things better than other people. You ask me to cake, I can cake better than other people. But the wisdom and the compassion at the time when I think you need to bring together, especially if there is a change of government, you know, you need compassion not to persecute. You need the compassion not to wield your vengeance. You know? And likewise, you know, Tun Mahathir is there for a specific reason, which is to bring back the Ultra Malays and the Malays who were previously very anti-opposition to come on board on this. Given their age, I don't think they want to stay long in politics.
Even Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim.
Dato Sri is 71, 72.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't think he wants to stay beyond 80. Even that is very old, you know. So I think
Mahathir is 93, you know.
Yeah, I know. He redefines age in this country. So, you know, and because of that, I think if we have to wait another 5 to 7 years of transition, I think the younger generation should be quite grateful to them, because the mantle of leadership that will be passed to the younger ones is something that is whole and good and that has been healed, rather than, for example, we inherit a very divided society now, and we have to heal it ourselves, because I think it's beyond a lot of us. I know people compare with Macron, with Trudeau, but this is Malaysia. This is not Canada, for God's sake.
We just want better looking leaders.
So yeah, I think I think we should give them the credit, and it's the stage of our nationhood when I think grandfathers and granduncles actually can bring together people of various backgrounds and inclinations and races together. Then I think the younger ones can take over, rather than the younger ones trying to take over now and try to basically battle both things. You have to put together a fractured society, and at the same time we want to fix economy, fix administratively, and so on. I think they are in a better position to heal society compared to us.
Okay. It has been one and a half hours.
I can go on for another 5.
Okay,
maybe
but
not,
I'm
maybe
going to
not.
let you go. But with this last question, this audience, his name is Louis Ng. He actually asked if your appeal, I think this is in the case where your appeal is being dismissed, and you have to, serve your sentence for 30 months. Do you plan to continue with your political career, or you have other plans?
I never plan more than 1 or 2 years ahead. Yeah. Many things change. I mean, I know it's cliche, but I always tell people, I mean, John Lennon used to tell, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. We make plans, but usually it doesn't work. So I grew up having a very short attention span of my life. I don't plan beyond 2 years. That's why when people ask that question, it's actually quite difficult because I do not know, or I cannot foretell how prison changed me. I've never been to prison. I can prepare myself as much as possible, but the years, 30 months of solitude in prison, you can never tell how I end up there. I mean, I may be angry, I may be sad, I may find a better way to make money in prison. I don't know.
Okay.
So because of that, I think it's very premature to say whether I come to politics or not. I know myself enough that my heart is not necessarily in politics. I know that I'm the type who can actually decide to do one thing and focus on that one thing and be very happy about it. No matter what the world tells me, I can decide to open a restaurant and be an extremely happy restaurateur. And I never look back and say that what a waste. I left Petronas, and people say if you had stayed, you should. I never regret. I mean, I enjoy every single moment of moving on because every new thing I do is a new adventure. So, with that in mind, it's very dangerous for me to rule out not coming back to politics or to preclude that I will do A, B, C. I think if I go to prison, I will go with open mind and see how it brings me after that. It's quite difficult because I don't plan to be in politics. Life brought me here. So
planning 30 months ahead is just too much.
Yeah, it's too much for me.
It's too much for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think this is a good place to stop our discussion today. Thank you, YB.
Thank you.
Whatever that you do, good luck. And yes.
I wanted to say I needed miracles, but that's fine.
Well,
any
miracle. Maybe some miracle. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
各位观众，谢谢你们今天晚上的收看。希望各位刚才就是从这个YB Rafizi Ramli 的这个谈话当中呢，会更清晰的了解，或者是得到更多的资讯。在来届的大选呢，我们可以做出更明智的选择。接下来呢，百格还会为大家送上呢更多政治人物或者是候选人的访谈，所以请留意百格，留意更多精彩的 On the Hot Seat。当然，也欢迎你在我们的脸书为我们就是建议您想要我们邀请的这一些政治人物或者候选人。晚安，我们再会。